Imagine this, you reach for a bottle of pain relief. A headache, maybe muscle aches, nothing unusual. You take one capsule, swallow it down with water, and within minutes, your body begins to fail. Your breathing slows, your heart gives out, and before anyone can understand what's happening, you're gone. That was the horrifying reality in Chicago, 1982. A city about to face a nightmare so bizarre, so cruel, it changed not only law enforcement history, but the way every single American views the safety of something as ordinary as medicine. It became one of the most infamous cold cases in American history, the Tylenol murders. September 29th, 1982. It was a typical Wednesday morning in the Chicago suburb of Elk Grove Village. The kind of morning where the city hummed with routine. Commuters rushing, families preparing for school, life moving forward without warning of the darkness ahead. At the home of the Janus family, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up with a scratchy throat and a simple complaint. "Mom, I don't feel well." Like millions of Americans had done before, her parents reached for a trusted remedy, extra-strength Tylenol capsules. Her father handed her a capsule with water. Minutes later, her parents heard a thud. They rushed into the bathroom, and what they saw would haunt them forever. Mary collapsed on the floor, unresponsive. Paramedics tried desperately to revive her, but within hours, this healthy, vibrant little girl was gone. Doctors were puzzled. The death of a 12-year-old from what seemed like a cold? It didn't make sense. At first, they chalked it up to a sudden freak medical event. But Mary's death was only the beginning. Later that same day, in the nearby suburb of Arlington Heights, 27-year-old Adam Janus, a hard-working postal worker, was feeling under the weather. He, too, reached for a bottle of Tylenol sitting on his kitchen counter. Within hours of taking it, Adam collapsed. Rushed to the hospital, doctors were stunned as his body shut down. They fought to save him, but by the afternoon, Adam was declared dead. His family, grief-stricken and overwhelmed, gathered at his home to mourn. His brother, Stanley, and sister-in-law, Teresa, devastated by the sudden loss, also complained of minor headaches from the stress of the day. Looking for relief, they opened the same bottle of Tylenol that Adam had used. Within minutes, both collapsed violently on the floor, foaming at the mouth, seizing, dying before their children's eyes. By nightfall, 3 members of the same family were dead. Doctors, nurses, and police began to connect the dots. This wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. Something far more sinister was happening. That same evening, other hospitals in the Chicago area began reporting similar cases. 27-year-old Mary Reiner, who had just given birth to her 4th child, collapsed after taking Tylenol for postpartum pain. 31-year-old Mary McFarland, a young mother of 2, also fell victim. 35-year-old Paula Prince, a flight attendant with United Airlines, was found dead in her apartment, with an open bottle of Tylenol on her nightstand. The city was in chaos, yet at this early stage, no one fully understood the connection. Patients were dying with the same terrifying symptoms. Sudden collapse, seizures, blue lips, rapid death. Doctors suspected poisoning, but from what? Imagine the scene at Northwest Community Hospital that night. Doctors whispering in the hallway, exhausted after failing to save one patient after another. A young nurse, pale and shaken, clutches a clipboard and says softly, "They all took Tylenol. Every single one." First, the idea seems absurd. Tylenol, the most trusted painkiller in America? A medicine lining nearly every household's cabinets? But as they checked the medical histories, as they interviewed families, as they stared down at half-empty bottles of capsules, a horrific possibility began to take shape. The Tylenol itself was killing people. Investigators acted fast. Samples of Tylenol capsules from victims' homes were rushed to a state lab. When chemists cracked them open, the results stunned even the most hardened professionals. The capsules were laced with potassium cyanide, a poison so deadly that just a few milligrams could kill in minutes. The discovery sent shockwaves across Chicago. This wasn't a contamination error. This wasn't a factory malfunction. Someone deliberately had taken trusted medicine replaced the contents with lethal poison, and returned the bottles to store shelves. This wasn't negligence. This was murder. By the next morning, the news broke like wildfire. Anchors across Chicago interrupted broadcasts with grim reports. Authorities are warning residents not to take extra-strength Tylenol capsules. Multiple deaths have been linked to the product, which may have been tampered with. Fear rippled through households. People scrambled to check their medicine cabinets. Lines formed at hospitals as panicked residents reported taking Tylenol. Supermarkets and pharmacies rushed to pull bottles from shelves. For decades, Tylenol had been a household name, trusted, safe. Now it has become a symbol of terror. Within 48 hours, 7 people were dead. The randomness was chilling. Young, old, mothers, fathers, ordinary people who had one thing in common. They trusted a brand name that was supposed to keep them safe. Chicago was gripped with paranoia. Every medicine bottle became a potential weapon. Parents whispered at night, debating whether to throw out every pill in the house. Newscasters urged vigilance, warning, "Do not consume any Tylenol capsules purchased recently." Meanwhile, law enforcement faced an unprecedented challenge. Who could have done this? How did they pull it off? And more importantly, would they strike again? Within 48 hours, 7 people were dead. The randomness was chilling. Young, old, mothers, fathers, ordinary people who had one thing in common. They trusted a brand name that was supposed to keep them safe. Chicago was gripped with paranoia. Every medicine bottle became a potential weapon. Parents whispered at night, debating whether to throw out every pill in the house. Newscasters urged vigilance, warning, "Do not consume any Tylenol capsules purchased recently." Meanwhile, law enforcement faced an unprecedented challenge. Who could have done this? How did they pull it off? And more importantly, would they strike again? The city of Chicago was in shock. But what began as a local tragedy quickly morphed into a national nightmare. Within hours of the cyanide discovery, authorities issued a blunt warning. Do not consume Tylenol capsules. What had once been a household remedy became a household terror. Americans rushed to their medicine cabinets, dumping bottles into trash cans, flushing capsules down toilets, terrified that death might be sitting in their homes disguised as pain relief. Pharmacies were swarmed. Clerks pulled boxes off shelves by the armful. News outlets showed live footage of Tylenol being swept away like contaminated evidence. Ordinary citizens called police hotlines in tears, convinced they or their loved ones had taken a deadly dose. One Chicago resident later recalled, "You didn't know if you'd wake up alive if you'd swallowed one." This wasn't just fear. It was hysteria, amplified by the constant drumbeat of TV anchors, radio updates, and screaming newspaper headlines. At the headquarters of Johnson & Johnson, panic mirrored that of the public. Tylenol was their crown jewel, responsible for more than 1/3 of the company's profits. Overnight, that reputation was obliterated. Executives scrambled into emergency meetings. Their worst fear wasn't just financial ruin. It was the possibility that more bottles, more batches, more stores across the country could be tainted. A bold, unprecedented decision was made. A nationwide recall of every Tylenol capsule. 31 million bottles were pulled from shelves. The cost? More than $100 million. A staggering amount in 1982. Tylenol's market share plummeted from 35% to just 8%. For a company that had built its reputation on safety, this was the largest product recall in American history. And it wasn't just about money. Johnson & Johnson executives went on national television, urging Americans, "Do not consume our capsules. Safety comes first." It was a corporate nightmare, but also a groundbreaking moment in crisis management. Imagine a Chicago mother, 1982. She's in her kitchen, staring at a half-used bottle of Tylenol. Her hands shake as she picks it up, her mind replaying the news broadcast she'd just seen. 7 people are dead. Her husband urges her to throw it away. But the questions linger. Was this bottle safe? Was it already poisoned? Could her children have been the next victims? That chilling uncertainty spread across millions of households. The killer wasn't just in Chicago. He was in every medicine cabinet in America. Law enforcement now faced one of the most unique investigations in U.S. history. This wasn't a crime scene with bloodstains or fingerprints. The killer had left no body behind, no weapon to trace. Instead, the crime scene was spread across multiple pharmacies, supermarkets, and homes. The FBI and local police poured manpower into the case. They examined store shelves, traced supply chains, and conducted thousands of interviews. A $100,000 reward was announced for information leading to an arrest. But there was no clear suspect. Theories swirled. Was it a disgruntled Johnson & Johnson employee? A terrorist group testing chemical warfare? Or a lone madman seeking chaos? The randomness of the victims suggested the last theory. Whoever had done this didn't know Mary Kellerman or the Janus family. These weren't targeted killings. This was pure, indiscriminate terror. Picture a smoke-filled conference room in downtown Chicago. Detectives, FBI agents, and public health officials gather around a long table. Maps of the city are pinned to the walls, dotted with pushpins marking where bottles were bought, where victims lived, where death struck. One agent slams his fist on the table. We're chasing a ghost. Whoever did this could be sitting in his living room watching the coverage. Another leans forward, exhausted. If he wanted to keep killing, he could. Nothing's stopping him from walking into another store right now and putting more poison back on the shelf. The room falls silent. The terrifying truth is clear. The killer has all the control. Chicago's newspapers ran with bold, terrifying headlines. Poison pills strike again. Cyanide deaths linked to Tylenol. Who is safe? The story dominated national broadcasts. Americans weren't just reading about murder. They were watching corporate trust collapse in real time. Reporters camped outside the homes of grieving families, desperate for interviews. Some investigators accused the media of fueling hysteria, but the pressure was unavoidable. This wasn't just a case. It was a national obsession. Then came a breakthrough, or so it seemed. A man named James Lewis, a 36-year-old with a checkered history, sent a letter to Johnson & Johnson. In it, he demanded $1 million to stop the Tylenol killings. The letter claimed he could make the deaths end if the money was delivered. Police traced the letter back to Lewis, who lived in Kansas City at the time. He was arrested, interrogated, and instantly became the prime suspect. But there was a problem. Investigators could never place him in Chicago at the time of the poisonings. His alibi, though shaky, couldn't be broken. There was no evidence linking him to the cyanide capsules. Instead, Lewis was convicted of extortion and sentenced to 20 years in prison. He served 13. But even after his release, suspicion lingered. Detectives believed he had the intelligence, the cruelty, and the ego to commit the murders. Yet the case against him was built on sand. The case grows cold. Weeks turned into months. No new poisonings occurred. Chicago's fear gradually eased, though the scars remained. Tylenol capsules vanished from shelves, replaced by safer alternatives. But for the families of the victims, justice never came. They buried their loved ones with no answers, no closure, and no killer behind bars. By 1983, the FBI investigation slowed. Leads dried up. The Tylenol murders became a cold case, one that haunted every investigator who touched it. Imagine him, whoever he was, watching the news, seeing the chaos unfold. The nation is panicking. The president of Johnson & Johnson apologizing on live television. Detectives scrambling with no trail to follow. And the killer sits back, unseen, untouched, smiling. He had just committed the perfect crime. 7 dead, millions terrified, and not a single shred of evidence pointing his way. By late 1982, Chicago, and indeed all of America, was forever changed. 7 innocent lives had been claimed, countless families left in anguish, and a nation's trust in a simple over-the-counter medicine shattered. The immediate panic had begun to subside, but the scars remained. Parents still double-checked their medicine cabinets. Supermarket shelves were eerily empty of capsules. News reports continued daily coverage of the investigation, highlighting every lead, every dead end, and every fear. Meanwhile, Families of the victims struggled with grief and unanswered questions. They attended funerals, shared stories, and clung to one truth. Their loved ones had been murdered in the most ordinary of ways. The irony was cruel. Something intended to heal had instead been killed. At the Janus family home, the grief was palpable. Relatives whispered about what they might have done differently, haunted by visions of their final interactions with their children. Mary Kellerman's room remained untouched for months, a silent testament to the life stolen far too soon. Faced with a potential corporate apocalypse, Johnson & Johnson took unprecedented action. Beyond the national recall, they issued new guidelines for medicine packaging. Tamper-evident seals became mandatory. Child-proof caps were implemented widely. Nationwide public education campaigns urged citizens to check medication before use. CEO James Burke appeared on television to address the crisis. His calm, empathetic demeanor resonated with the public. We must ensure the safety of every person who trusts our products. We have failed to protect our consumers, and we will not rest until trust is restored. In a masterclass of crisis management, Johnson & Johnson successfully rebuilt much of its reputation within months, setting a new standard for corporate responsibility. Yet, the shadow of the murders never left the company or the nation. Imagine investigators poring over spreadsheets, store receipts, and shipment logs in a dimly lit office. Their heads are heavy, eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. They know the killer could strike again, yet there are no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, no surveillance footage. Detectives debate theories. Could the poisonings have been a personal vendetta, targeting families unknown to the victims? Or was it sheer sociopathic thrill, a killer testing America's trust in its daily routines? Hours stretch into days. One detective slams a hand against the table. We're running out of time. If this person wants to strike again, we're blind. The office falls silent. The weight of responsibility is crushing. One small mistake, one oversight, and more lives could be lost. Authorities had pinned their hopes on James Lewis, the extortionist who claimed knowledge of the poisonings. But the evidence was circumstantial at best. Lewis was convicted of extortion for sending the $1 million demand to Johnson & Johnson, but never of murder. Despite decades passing, questions linger. Could Lewis have been the poisoner? Did someone else act entirely independently, using the extortion letter as a diversion? Was it a lone individual or a coordinated act of terror? The answers remain elusive. Even with modern forensic technology, no conclusive evidence has ever definitively identified the perpetrator. Though unsolved, the Tylenol murders left a permanent mark on public health and corporate responsibility. 1. Tamper-evident packaging became the gold standard. Today, virtually every capsule, bottle, or over-the-counter medicine features a protective seal. 2. Corporate transparency improved. Companies learned that swift action, honesty, and public reassurance could prevent complete brand collapse. 3. Public vigilance increased. Americans became more aware of potential dangers in ordinary products. Yet the haunting reality persists. The killer walked free, unseen, and unpunished. Every bottle of Tylenol opened in the early 1980s carried the potential for death, a terrifying thought that lingers even today. Picture a historian walking through a recreated 1982 Chicago pharmacy. Empty shelves, chalk outlines of where bottles once stood, and photos of the victims pinned on the wall. He turns to the camera. These were ordinary people. Mothers, fathers, children. They didn't ask to be part of a national nightmare. And yet, their deaths forced an entire nation to confront something most Americans never imagined. That even the simplest acts, taking a pill, caring for a sick child, can be deadly in the wrong hands. Across the country, families still remember. They gather each year quietly, lighting candles and speaking the names of those lost. Mary Kellerman, Adam Janus, Teresa Janus, Mary Reiner, Paula Prince, Mary McFarland, and the others whose lives ended in ordinary kitchens, living rooms, and bedrooms. The FBI still keeps the Tylenol murders as an active cold case. Advances in forensic science, including DNA testing and trace chemical analysis, offer new hope, but decades of contamination, lack of physical evidence, and the random nature of the poisonings make solving it a monumental challenge. In 2011, the FBI reviewed the case with modern technology, but no new leads produced an arrest. Public fascination remains strong, as podcasts, documentaries, and YouTube channels dissect every known detail. Each year, amateur sleuths attempt to crack the mystery, but the killer has become a ghost, his identity lost to time. Imagine the killer today, decades later. He walks unnoticed through a city oblivious to the terror he once wrought. Perhaps he's long gone. Perhaps he's living quietly, blending seamlessly into society. No one knows. No one will ever know, unless some hidden clue finally surfaces. And therein lies the true terror of the Tylenol murders. The idea that one person acting alone could disrupt an entire nation's sense of safety. That a bottle, a capsule, could carry death into ordinary homes. That trust, so fragile and so vital, can be shattered in an instant. The Tylenol murders were not just a crime. They were a wake-up call. They forced a nation to confront vulnerability in its most mundane routines. They created a blueprint for corporate crisis management. And they left a legacy of caution and vigilance that persists to this day. Yet, the most unsettling truth remains. The killer was never caught. Justice, in the traditional sense, was denied. Families endured grief with no closure. And millions of Americans, even decades later, still feel the echo of those cyanide-laced capsules. In a world where we take medicine for granted, the Tylenol murders stand as a chilling reminder. Even the most ordinary, trusted objects can harbor unimaginable danger. 7 lives lost, a nation shaken, a mystery unsolved, and a reminder that sometimes evil wears the guise of something familiar, something safe, something ordinary.